all sentient beings. So welcome back to Tara Institute. My name's Damien, and this month we have been looking at a sort of a logical presentation of how to fulfill our natural wish to be happy and to be free from suffering. And so we've followed a sequence of steps that are important to understand for us to make the connection between fulfilling my own goal, sort of this innate or natural goal, natural wish, natural behaviour to want happiness and to want to be free from suffering or misery. So part of this, the very beginning of this, is to acknowledge that all of our life actions are really motivated by this wish for happiness and this wish to be free from suffering. What we have for lunch, what we watch on the television, who we marry, what career we have, everything has this underlying wish for happiness and a wish to avoid any problems, any suffering, any difficulty. So that's quite reasonable. So don't get the idea that it's unreasonable to wish for or to have your own happiness. And it's an important consideration to actually view that as a right. And I think this is quite important. If we strongly view our own happiness and our own wish to be free from suffering as a right, then that can really strengthen the next step in our practice. So the next step in our practice is this statement that to extend that natural wish for myself to be happy and for myself to be free from suffering, to extend that to encompass others, that extension to have the wish for happiness for all sentient beings and the wish to be free from suffering for all sentient beings, that extension of that natural wish for myself, the extension to all others, is, as Geshe-Doga mentioned last year, that is the essence of all the Buddha's teachings. So this is a very important point for us to contemplate. And so the Buddha's teachings are saying that the wish to benefit others and the wish not to harm them, that is the essence of what the Buddha taught. And then flowing from that wish is the actual benefiting of others and the actual non-harming of others, so that in terms of action, that is the essence of all of the Buddha's teachings. So they're points to contemplate. So what I've been talking about is starting from my natural wish to be happy and to be free from suffering. So then I can look and I can ask myself the question, what then is happiness for me and what is misery for me? And in the analysis of that, we can examine, is, like using our own life experience, is wealth, is that happiness? Is a good relationship, is that happiness? Is a nice house, a good career, fame, importance, possessions, respect, all these things, are they in themselves happiness? And similarly, a little bit of hunger, some insults, some deception, somebody lying to you, some other misfortunes that might happen, are they in themselves misery? So we can examine our own life experience and start looking. If I said to you, what is happiness? What is misery? And the examples that we may have we could have all sorts of examples. But here, the thing to really understand is that in the way we experience happiness or the way we experience misery, the direct and in Buddhist language we could say the substantial cause of our happiness or misery is the state of mind of a happy state of mind and a misery or an unhappy state of mind. So that between us and the whole world, or between me and the whole world, there is my mental state, my experience, my apprehension and my perception of the world, and that the thing that is actually really giving me either happiness or misery is actually the state of mind. It's the actual generator of happiness for me is the happy state of mind. So then we can analyse and we can then ask the next question. So does the happy state of mind have a cause? Is it something completely random? Does it have some conditions? Does it have some cause? Is it completely just interchangeable with misery and they just flip from one to the other without any reason? So we can try to the best of our ability to see what the causes of happiness might be. And so part of that process is if we can develop some introspection, from this moment on, we can have a little bit of our attention observing the mind and seeing whether the experience we have is a happy one or an unhappy one. And if we can detect that it's a happy one, then we can try to look to see what is the cause of that. What is the external object, the person or the situation? What is that situation? How am I perceiving that? And what is my response to that? We can actually look at this whole process. What is my attitude or my view of that situation? And what states of mind do I actually have present in my mind at that moment? So we can learn from that. We can see that at the moment of anger, that in that moment of anger, first thing we can see if we have a look inside is that the mind is very disturbed. And not only is the mind disturbed, our body is probably disturbed as well. Our face, our breathing, our mental, our blood flow, all these things are affected. And the mind itself is disturbed. Okay, so we can see that. And then we can say, well, what am I doing? How am I perceiving this other person? How am I perceiving what they're saying? How am I reacting to that? We look at that collection of experience. So that helps us identify what the causes of a happy state of mind and what the causes of an unhappy state of mind, what they actually are. So we can learn from our own experience. And then we can make we can possibly do this by ourselves, but generally the role of the Buddha and the role of all the various religions are to try to assist us in this process. So, what Buddhism presents is that the cause of a happy state of mind is virtue, and that the cause of an unhappy state of mind is what's called non-virtue. So in a way, the labels virtue and non-virtue are just given to the experiences or the actions that result in happiness or that result in suffering. So from a Buddhist definition, virtue is something whose consequence is happiness. And non-virtue is something where the consequence is misery. And that's the delineation of virtue and non-virtue on the basis of the consequence. So this recognition of action, we could say action from either the body, like physical action, the speech, verbal action, and the mind, so mental activity. So from the activity of body, speech and mind, some consequence is generated. And that consequence for me will be either happiness or misery, dependent on what those actions, those prior actions of body, speech and mind, what they are. What is their nature, what is their content, what's their focus, what's the emotion involved, what's the consequence in terms of suffering for others or suffering for myself or whatever, so that those prior actions of body, speech and mind create for me an experience, a later consequence of either happiness or misery. So for me then, for a person, for an individual, the path to realise the natural wish for happiness and the natural wish to be free from suffering is to try to see what are the actions that result in happiness and what are the actions that result in misery, and then to engage, from this point forward, to engage in the actions that will generate happiness and to abandon the actions that will result in misery or suffering. So in a way, it's as simple as that, just engagement or abandonment, depending on how I see the consequences of my actions. So then we might get sort of trapped into a belief that it's all about me. I don't have to worry about others particularly. So what I do to others or whatever is their problem, not my problem. So then to see that in regard to others, whether our relationships with others, whether we harm them or whether we benefit them, that whatever those actions are that we do, that in every case those actions are preceded in my mind by a wish, so that my actions towards others are not created out of no intention, they're created out of a wish. So either the wish to harm or the wish to benefit. And so then if we go back to that previous thing, if we see that our mind in relation to others may be a mind of wishing to harm or a mind of wishing to benefit, that we can then understand that whatever actions we do in regard to others have a direct, sort of a consequential impact on myself, because that mind that motivates the action towards others is my mind, and because it's my mind, I will suffer or enjoy the consequences of that mind and the actions that come from it. So in a way, that's also an important consideration, because we sometimes become completely indifferent to others, and we perform actions that may be quite harmful to others, but we do them out of a sort of a complete indifference and a complete disregard for others. And we might justify that on the basis, well, I have to look after myself, you know. And so the connection that we need to make here is that I am looking after myself when I generate benefit towards others and cease to harm others. That is the ultimate means to actually look after yourself. So we're back to this identification of how do I create for myself happiness, and how do I create for myself freedom from misery? How do I overcome misery for myself? So in a way, the Buddha, and you'd have to say that all of the major religions have tried to make that easy for us. So the way that the Buddha tried to make it easy for us was to outline a series of actions to avoid and a series of actions to engage in. So the actions to avoid are called the 10 non-virtues, and the actions to engage in are called the 10 virtues. So the 10 non-virtues, the first is killing. So Buddha said, don't kill. And it's not just a matter of saying don't kill, there's actually a reason why not to kill. And the reason not to kill is because life is the most precious thing that any individual possesses. Life itself. And so for ourselves, our own life, in a comfortable society like this, we don't think that our life is particularly threatened. But if our life is threatened, we suddenly have this incredible fear of the loss of our own life and a sense of wanting to protect that. And then if we're in a situation where our life is ebbing away, you can see that many, many people are absolutely terrified at that thought of losing their life. So life is the most precious possession anybody has. And so to take any creature's life is really one of the most harmful things you can do. So that's why killing is to be avoided. So the non-virtue is killing, which means to shorten the life of another being. And then the next one is stealing. So the possessions that somebody has is maybe the next most important thing that they have, all of their possessions. So to steal, to take the possessions of another, is a very harmful thing. Then sexual misconduct. So somebody's partner, trustworthy partner, very connected partner, to interfere and sort of have adultery or whatever, is again a very harmful thing because of the value that person sees the relationship as. Then we come to the 4 of speech. So lying is intentionally deceiving somebody. And again, you can see the harm that is experienced by somebody who is deceived by a lie. Then divisive speech. So talking to separate people, to cause a schism or a split in a group of people, to cause a, and this, we can see that we do this through talking behind people's back or presenting a view which is aimed at splitting people So that is a very harmful type of speech. Then the next one is harsh speech, and I think harsh speech includes slander. Not sure if slander comes under the separation one or this one, but harsh speech also includes things like swearing, that the talking very harshly is itself a disturbing thing to other people. So it's good to avoid. And then the fourth one of speech is called idle gossip. So idle gossip is like just talking, saying nothing, but just people talking to somebody, engaging in a purposeless, ineffective, non-value speech. And the harm that causes is that it wastes time. So you could say that watching TV endlessly, that engaging in that possibly falls into idle gossip. I would think Facebook, probably falls into that category, and a lot of other things possibly fall into that idea of idle gossip or senseless talk. And the problem with that, not that it directly harms anybody in a way, but because we engage in it so much that it wastes time. Then we come to the three mental ones, and we have harmful intent. The mind of harmful intent, wishing to harm somebody, fantasizing, having a thought to harm somebody, and then also sort of engaging in that thought, endorsing it, fantasizing it, but just the harmful intent itself is very destructive, because from the harmful intent it flows to the other non-virtues. From harmful intent we will lie, we'll kill, we'll steal, we'll deceive people, etc. from the harmful intent. Then the next one is the covetousness, and covetousness is grasping at somebody's possessions, including their partner or their relationships as well, but generally talking about possessions. And then the last one is wrong view. And of all of the 10, this is probably the main one that sort of has a Buddhist context to it, in a sense. And so wrong view here is having a belief that cause and effect does not exist. If you have the thinking that there is no connection between actions and the results, that is a wrong view, which is actually very destructive. And the other one that's generally mentioned is to have a sort of an assertion that enlightenment is not possible, that is also a wrong view. And so that's very destructive. It's very destructive because it means that you will very likely never engage in a path, in a path to develop your qualities. If you think that an improvement or a development of yourself is not possible, and you hold that view very strongly, then it's unlikely that you will either encourage other people to engage in some benefit, or that you yourself will engage in any development of your mind or of your actions. So for that reason, it's very destructive as well. And then the 10 virtues. So the 10 virtues are viewed as the opposite of that. But to understand what opposite means, we can actually look at some examples. So to engage in the 10 virtues is, for instance, being in a situation where killing other creatures is maybe attractive to you. You know, there's a possum in the roof, there's some creatures in the garden, and you think, I want to kill them. So the virtue of not killing is seeing that wish to kill and denying it, or deliberately not engaging in it. So seeing somebody who's asked you a question and you have the wish to lie to them, to deceive them, and then resisting that wish to deceive, you do not lie. So the 10 virtues, they are the reverse of the 10 non-virtues, but they are the reverse in the sense that there is the situation to engage in that non-virtue and you resist it. And that's that resistance, that changing of your habituation. So if we think in terms of habituation, if we continue to engage in stealing, for instance, then we strengthen the habituation. But if we're presented with an opportunity to steal and we feel that opportunity and we resist it, you can see that I am trying to change my habituation. I'm trying to reverse my habituation. So we can look at this whole process as a battle of our habituations. We have natural habituations through accumulating the causes. We have natural habituations to kill, to lie, to sexually misconduct, to steal, to cause schisms, to gossip. We have all these natural, through accumulation of the habituation. They appear to us as very natural behaviours. And so the practice of the 10 non-virtues is trying to reverse that habituation by seeing that opportunity that is presented to us to engage in that non-virtue, and we resist it. We deliberately resist it. And so from the Buddhist description of this, that's called a virtuous action, that resistance of habituation to negativity. So that's a good point to understand, because we can then see that we can actually practice in this way every day. We can feel the inclination to lie or to gossip or to speak very harshly. We may have become very habituated to swearing or to saying things in a very harsh manner. So we can feel that inclination to do that and then resist it. And by resisting it, we then change our habituation very gradually. So this is something that is a gradual process. So the Buddha gave those guidelines in a way to make it easy for us, because if we just have this big banner, benefit, don't harm, we can be a little bit uncertain as to what that means. So the 10 virtues and the 10 non-virtues are just a way to assist us in understanding what benefit and harm actually mean. And of course there's many, many other non-virtues and virtues that we can engage in. So let's just say one more thing in regard to how we interact with others. So if we think of the way that we interact with others, like at the moment our wish to benefit or our wish to harm might be very weak, and so our actions towards others, if we can see how my action towards others is driven by a wish in my mind. My action towards somebody else is initiated from a wish in my mind. And that wish then manifests as an action. So the wish to harm, So there, in the sequence of mental awareness, I perceive somebody, I perceive them. My mind goes like, dislike, or neutral. It's as simple as that. Anything, any person that I perceive, in that first moment, my mind is going like, dislike, or neutral. And for whatever reason, our own habituation, our prejudices, the state that we are in at that moment, we go down one of those paths. So if I go down the dislike path, I dislike, then I create some reasons why I dislike, and then I start to have the wish to harm because I dislike. So on the basis of dislike, I have the wish to harm, and on the basis of the wish to harm, I then have the thought of some action to do that will harm, and on the basis of that, I do that action, and I create harm. So that sequence of mental processes, which for us is pretty much invisible. We are not aware of that process, that sequence. We can examine it and we can see afterwards, well, that's true. I did start from just the dislike, and then I proceeded to a thought about harming them, and then I proceeded to an action of harming them, and then I rejoiced that I had harmed them. So there's this sequence of action. And similarly with benefit, that benefit for others does not occur without the wish to benefit. And the wish to benefit comes from like, some sense of like. So we can engage, we can magnify our likelihood of benefiting others if we can maintain a mental state that is predisposed to benefit. So what that mental state is that is disposed towards benefit are the minds of love and compassion. So love is the mind that sees somebody lacking happiness and wants them to have happiness. And it's based on a general affection, a loving kindness for that person. So on the basis of that loving kindness, then we see that they're lacking happiness, and so we have the wish that they have happiness. And on the basis of that loving affection, loving kindness, we see that they are suffering, and we have the wish that they be free from that suffering. So we can see that love and compassion are almost the same thing. They're both based on an affectionate, sort of like a warmth, a loving affection attitude. And from that, when we see that they lack happiness, we want them to have happiness. And when we see that they are suffering, we want them to be free from suffering. But the point of those minds of love and compassion is that on the basis of love and compassion, to generate the wish to harm is impossible. That if we can maintain an attitude of love and compassion towards others, then the thought to harm others is impossible. So we can take it that one step back. If we can maintain a sort of a loving affection towards others, then the mind that wishes to harm cannot exist in my mental state. So a very great deal of Buddhist thinking is around finding ways to generate a loving affection towards others. You know, finding some basis that justifies having a loving affection towards all others. So a big part of all this discussion is this sense of awareness of our own thinking. So at the moment we have very little introspection, very little awareness of our own thinking, of our own mental state. You know, we find that we've blurted out some insult, just like as though it comes from nowhere, without actually recognising the underlying aversion that we are carrying. You know, so when our mind is pervaded by aversion, then from that basis of aversion, of dislike, it's very easy to harm others, very easy to insult or to steal or to cheat or to kill even. Because the mind, the basis of the mind for that type of action, that mind is present. And on the basis of that mind, the action, the wish to harm and the actions of harming come very easy. And so going back to that natural wish to be happy and the natural wish to be free from suffering, by engaging in actions like this in relation to others, all that I am doing for myself is creating misery, future misery for myself. Through my actions, I am creating my own future suffering. So you can see then that the tool for us to be able to do anything about this is some of these mental states. Being able to familiarise my mind with a virtuous state. So if we call the minds of love and compassion a virtuous state, the more that we can familiarise our minds with love and compassion, the more that we can protect ourselves from engaging in harmful actions. And so meditation, in the Tibetan word for meditation, gom is the word for meditation. It has this meaning of familiarising with the virtuous object. Familiarising with the virtuous object. And so we can actually see that the whole path here, that for happiness for myself and the freedom from misery for myself, and the happiness and the freedom from misery for all others, is the same, in that the familiarisation with the virtuous state of mind is the ultimate protection against harming others and harming yourself. And it is the enabler of benefiting others and benefiting yourself. So that's why meditation is so important. So to train our minds in cultivating mental states, a familiarity or a habituation towards a virtuous state of mind. So we'll do some quick meditation. I've spoken for longer than I normally do, but we've still got plenty of time. So if we have that thought that for myself, the protection against harming myself, creating mental states that are harmful to myself and creating actions that will result in future harm for myself, and instead to create mental states that are beneficial for myself and actions that will be beneficial for myself in the future. And not only that, but benefiting others and not harming others is really dependent on me having some control over my mind and being able to hold my mind in a virtuous state. So we can start this with just a 2-minute meditation, but our actual aim is to be able to hold our mind in a virtuous state every second of the day, to have the mind held in a virtuous state. So we try to train the mind in meditation as a way to accomplish this. So we'll just focus on the breath, And so just the natural breathing, and we focus on the breath and become aware of where your mind is, and bring your mind within yourself. Let all of the thoughts drop away, and keep doing that process until your mind has no thought in it. And then turn your attention to the breath. And just focus on that mere coming and going of the breath. Just relax very slightly and reflect on what happened during that first couple of minutes of meditation. Just see what happened with your mind. And then we'll repeat the same meditation. So with a strong determination to keep the concentration on the breath, just repeat the same process, and we'll meditate on the breath again for the next few minutes. And just relax your concentration a little bit. Once again, check what happened during the meditation. And we'll repeat the same process again, just one more time. So we're only doing these for 1 or 2 minutes. So once again, just settle your mind. Let all the thoughts go from your mind and have a strong determination to have 100% focus on the breath. Stop any daydreaming or fantasizing. Just keep the focus really strongly just on the breath. And we'll repeat that meditation. Just relax your concentration. Well, we've got a little bit of time for some discussion or questions or whatever, if anybody has anything they'd like to say. Yeah.
Just about the idle gossip concept and meaningless conversations and speech. Isn't that part of how we connect with other human beings, is having conversations with them, and sometimes they are about pretty much nothing, they don't have to have a lot of depth to them to connect with other people. Doesn't it help develop compassion?
Yeah, so the question is about idle gossip, and the example is about making a connection with other people. So absolutely, that when the motivation is, you're walking down the street and there's somebody there and you say, oh, the weather, gee, it's pretty hot, isn't it? Okay, so that's not idle gossip, because the intention is to make a connection with that stranger or that person, maybe to make them feel more comfortable in a situation or to engage some friendliness with them. So you have to see the distinction between an action which is motivated in that case out of some compassion or affection for the person. That's different to mindless chat that we engage in at other times. I think that's something to check. If you think all idle gossip is actually this, high ideal engagement with other people, sometimes it may be. But in my case, I would think that a lot of the discussion and, electronic media, interfacing, television, whatever, is not particularly productive and not memorable. Whereas I think if you went down the street and you saw a person that you felt was maybe not comfortable, or a homeless person, for instance, and you show them some warmth and affection by talking about the football or the weather or something like that, a fairly apparently meaningless topic, absolutely that's not idle gossip. But I think there's many other interchanges that we have, and that if you did that, you would remember that, and you'd, in your own mind, you would remember it as an act of kindness. But all the rest of the idle gossip we engage in, you do not remember it as an act of kindness. And that, you know, so it's not, there's not an absolute that if you're just talking about, you know, the football or something, it's by its own nature, it's not idle gossip. It depends on the mind. So the mind that engages in that meaningless chatter, that mind is just a meaningless, gossiping mind with no purpose other than time wasting. So, yeah. Is there still a question at the back there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether you'd accept to learn the happiness. I'm not a fan of innate. I think
Yeah.
I've spent my life working with people that we have very few innate things in their lives.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, the way you were describing it suggested that we really learn to be happy, we learn to be sad, we learn to hate, like that. Is it not right that we can, your innateness might be sort of puts me a little bit of a...
Let me just be clear. Are you saying that we do or do not have a natural wish to be happy?
I'm questioning that.
Okay.
Only on the basis that I think we have very few genetic variables. And I think we learn what most of us do.
Well, okay. So what we're... the assertion here is that the wish to be happy and the wish to be free from some suffering is not innate. Okay? The jury's out. Okay. Well, the thing is to examine, and you know, whether you can see it within yourself or not, maybe, you know, maybe that's difficult. And I would say it is something to be examined and proven to yourself that it is natural. But we have to, and that's why, you know, when I make the assertion to see that every action in your life, coming here, not coming here, going to university, not going to university, having this relationship, that relationship, doing this, doing that, I'm making the assertion that every one of those actions is motivated out of a natural wish to be happy and a natural wish to be free from suffering. And so I would include in that somebody killing their enemy, somebody suiciding, somebody doing, you know, all sorts of different things. That we can understand everybody's actions from seeing that they have a wish to be happy and a wish to be free from suffering. So that wish in itself does not mean that those actions are skillful or that they result in happiness and they result in a freedom from misery. And that's really the point about what the Buddha came to the earth to do, is to show us that there are a collection of actions which are skillful in fulfilling my wish for happiness and in fulfilling my wish to be free from suffering. Because if we're left to our own devices, we do not have the means to actually achieve real happiness or real freedom from misery. Because, you know, and from a Buddhist point of view, because we're actually afflicted by a very deep-seated ignorance that grasps at existence in a faulty way. And because of that, we then produce very faulty, unskillful actions. So we're all afflicted by a sort of a deep-seated ignorance that has... So on the one hand, we have this wish to be happy and the wish to be free from suffering, but instead we go through every day getting upset, you know, feeling miserable, having problems, not being able to deal with them, getting angry at even the people closest to us, you know. So there's two things to learn from that. One is that we do have the natural wish to be happy and to be free from suffering. And secondly, the methods that I use to fulfill that are very unskillful, and I need to find out why. You know, that's the challenge. Why am I so unskillful in finding happiness and trying to be free from misery? And that question is really the basis of what the Buddha taught. Why am I so unskillful in finding happiness? And there's a reason. And it's due to a whole lot of layers of ignorance that affect my judgment. So I think that it's beneficial to harm my enemy, to push him away, to humiliate, even to kill, you know. But, you know, what the Buddha is trying to tell us is that's not skillful. You know? And so we have to go through a whole process of thinking and checking our own experience. So look, it's okay to think that, you know, let's say we go with your thought that it's not natural, that it's something that our mothers taught us or something like that. So then I would ask you, for an ant, is it natural to want happiness and want to be free from misery? You know, study an ant and see whether you think it moves this way or that way in dependence on wanting to avoid misery and wanting to have happiness. Every move that the ant makes, I would assert, is based on wanting happiness and wanting to be free from misery. So you can check that. The bee, the butterfly, the worm, the ant, the dog, the cat, you can check. Do they have a natural wish for happiness and a natural wish to be free from suffering? And then if you examine all those and you say, well, it looks like they do, then you can make the assumption, well, probably I am as well. Okay, so I'll be back next week, and we'll just do a little dedication meditation. So to think for us all to come together, meditate, talk, listen, think, you know, all of that, it's a very precious, rare thing. So we think that collected value from, you know, and this is virtue, that it takes the form of a ball of white light in the middle of the room, and then imagine that comes above your own head and pours down into you. And think that all of your physical and mental difficulties are completely banished, and that light all collects in the form of a big egg at your heart, radiating out light. And then think of everybody else here in the room. You know, everybody has their own individual circumstance and situation. And think that they want happiness, but they actually lack happiness, and they want to be free from misery and problems, but in their lives they actually encounter problems, difficulties and miseries. And so with that thought, you radiate out light from your heart, and it brings each one of the people in the room here to be free from suffering and to have happiness. So to to have physical and mental happiness, and to be completely free from physical and mental suffering. And so the reason that we do this is because we recognise that each one of these people wants happiness and wants to be free from suffering. And so in response to that, we send out this light to them. And then thinking of your family and the people close to you, out of your affection for them, you radiate light that eliminates all of their physical and mental suffering and endows them with physical and mental happiness. And so like this, to every living being, imagine every living being in front of you in the form of humans, and imagine the rays of light go out. So if we're able to generate some affection to every living being, then that makes this process very natural. So we can try to generate some affection to every living being, or we can think that every living being wants happiness and wants to be free from suffering, and that alone is enough reason to bring them happiness and to free them from suffering. So imagine rays of light go out from your heart to these countless living beings and bring them into a state of happiness and a state free from all suffering. And then collect all that light back into yourself. Let that light return and absorb into yourself. And enjoy a great sense of delight at having been able to do this. So thank you very much. So I will be back here next week for the last of my Monday nights.